Top 51 games of all time, number 51 to number 40. Come on back after the break. Number 51 is going to be Cthulhu Wars from Petersen Games. Now, Cthulhu Wars is an extremely asymmetric game that plays anywhere from 3 to, let's say we can go all the way up to 11 players once the new maps finally come out for the game. This is a game that's all about world domination, and Cthulhu Mythos, where every single player is going to take control of an asymmetric faction. And you're going to be using these factions to go ahead and complete world domination. Now, the thing that makes this game so unique among other games of these kind of caliber, which is basically your dudes on the map kind of game where the players working to try to defeat the other players. The thing that separates this game from all these other games of this ilk is the fact that this game is so darn asymmetric. This is one of those games where all the factions aren't just a little bit different. It's like other games out there in the market that are similar to this. No, this is a game where all the factions are extremely different. Every one of these factions plays extremely differently. They have their own tactics, their own strategies, the only way they play the game. They have their own unique units that are very, very unique to them. They have their own spellbooks, their own way that they're going to play out through all this game. And there's so darn much that's available for this game. Now, this game is new on the list for 2020. It was not on the list back when I did the last list here. And the reason why this game has finally moved back onto the list is to do the thanks of the new base set for Cthulhu Wars, which is going to be the Cthulhu Wars dual set. Now, what this has done is made this game play fantastically, again, as a two-player game. And it's also done the one amazing thing of helping bring down the price for the game. Because Cthulhu Wars, while it is a fantastic game to look at on the table, it's also a game that is kind of a little bit higher up on the price scale, because this is a game that, it's not a cheap game to get. But this is a game that it plays fantastically with multiple player accounts, multiple different ways you play the game. And it's one of those games that's never, ever going to play the same way ever again, because there's just so darn much available from the game. You have multiple maps, you have multiple different factions, you have multiple different player accounts, you have special different add-ons. They're going to add different ways you're going to play the game. There's different races. There's different great old ones that you add in. There's neutral factions. There is just so darn much that you bring in this game that if you want everything for Cthulhu Wars, this is basically what I like to refer to as a lifestyle game. This is one of those games that you can play for years and years and years just to try to master the intricacies of the game, working on trying to master just how the game plays, and working on trying to just learn how your faction works versus other factions, versus other different tricks and tactics other players can bring to the table, and versus all the cool things that bring together this great game of Cthulhu Wars from Sandy Petersen Games. Coming in at number 50 is Edge of Darkness, a game from AEG for 2 to 4 players. And a game that, in a way, takes everything, including the kitchen sink, throws it all together, but for some reason it just works because of some fantastic new mechanics that have never been thrown together in a board game before. Matter of fact, this is the game that actually was supposed to be designed before Mystic Vale. And unfortunately, AEG looked at this game and saw everything that was available for the game, and they said, no, let's not do that. Let's try something a little bit smaller, and if that's successful, then we'll go ahead and bring out Edge of Darkness. And you see how successful Mystic Vale became. That's why Edge of Darkness came out, and you see just this great, fantastic design all thrown together to create this very unique gaming experience. Now, what are the things that make this game so darn unique? I mean, you look at the game, it is a typical game where players will be buying cards from a community row. Players will be buying the cards, adding the cards to their hand, using these cards to use special abilities. We've seen this all before. What is so unique about this game that makes it so fantastic at number 50 on this list? Well, this game takes in worker placement. Again, nothing too unique about that. That's things we've seen before. This game takes in the ability to actually craft cards as you play the games. You're not only drafting cards, but as you're playing the game, you're actually crafting cards. And as you take these cards, you're going to sleeve these cards inside other cards. They're going to give these cards more and more powers. So as you play every single game, every single one of your cards is going to get more and more powerful as you add them to the hand. But here's the big trick about this game. As you make your cards more powerful, these cards are double-sided. You're also making the bad guys more powerful, and the bad guys are going to start attacking all of our players, because the final thing that makes this game so unique is the fact the game does include a cube tower. Now, the way this cube tower is going to work is you're going to see there's always 3 monsters out and about, and every single turn, players will be adding cubes into the cube tower based on the cards and different actions that are available. And depending on the amount of players that you're playing in the game, anywhere from 2 to 4 players, once you get a certain amount of cubes in one of these special sections, that specific monster is going to attack a certain amount of players. And the players that are going to be attacked is going to be based on whoever has the most cubes in that location. Now, if the most cubes happens to be black cubes, all the players are going to be attacked. If the most cubes happens to be green, then the green player alone is going to be attacked. But if multiple players tie, then both those players are also going to be attacked. And that's what adds to the challenge game. This card is going to attack all the players who meet that criteria, and then those players have to fight that card off. If they fail to do so, bad things are going to happen for them. So you have this game that includes this card crafting system with this very unique cube tower, which adds in these bad guys, which players have to monitor different things such as their own personal resources, their own workers, crafting their own cards, understand that every time you make a card more powerful, you're also making the bad guys more powerful because they get to become the more powerful monsters because your improved cards also become the improved bad guys. So you have this really interesting game that plays from 2 to 4 players that has some very, very unique mechanics thrown together to create this really fantastic game. Now, adding into the amount of really awesomeness that's inside this box set is the fact that there's a phenomenal amount of replay in this game. Now, every time you play this game, you are simply going to pick 10 of these different locations, and there's preset things that you can pick from the rulebook that says pick these special locations. They all work really, really well together. But if you really want to, you can be brave and pick 10 random locations. And it's 10 random locations out of over 50 that are available in this game. And again, you only use 10 every single time you play the game. Plus the interaction of all the players between the cube tower, having to build up all the resources to prevent these monsters from attacking while trying to get your guild's influence improved to go ahead and win the game, create this really fantastic gaming experience that is not only very unique with all the things involved in the game, it also creates a very enjoyable gameplay. It's number 50 on my top 51 games of all time. Number 49 and new to the list is going to be Carson City, a 2 to 6 player worker placement game, but a worker placement game with a bite, because while I enjoy the idea of a worker placement game, one of the things I don't enjoy about worker placement games is it feels like it's more of a race. Whoever gets to the first location first is usually one to benefit. And yes, I know that's part of the gameplay of it, and there are worker placement games that I do enjoy for that aspect. What I enjoy about Carson City is the fact that it takes that to the next level by making it so you don't always get the spots you are going out there and working for. I'm going to kind of get ahead of myself. What exactly is Carson City? Carson City is a 2 to 6 player worker placement game based in the Old West, where the players are trying to rebuild the wild frontier by building buildings, laying plots and lands, building roads to these all different locations, and basically working on this track that allows them to get different abilities by sending out their cowboys to go out there and work at these different things. And it's their typical worker placement game. We've seen all these mechanics before. What is so unique about this game and what elevates it so high up on the list here is a couple really interesting things about this game. First of all, when a player goes to a location trying to lay claim to this location on the track, they're not guaranteed to get it, because if multiple players go to the same location, they're going to shoot it out cowboy style, because they're going to be going there and using the amount of guns that they possessed. And the amount of guns they possess allows them to fight for that space, literally fight for the space by shooting their guns at each other, which adds an elevated, very thematic, but it also elevated really cool ability to play a worker placement game a little bit differently, because it's no longer a worker placement game about being the first to go to the location. It's a worker placement game about being the first to go to the location and or being able to hold on to that location when somebody else tries to take that location from you by just having more guns, more hired hands, and more power to shoot you out and take out those locations from you. Now, the game also has a really cool theme, really matching the Wild West theme, but one more thing that kind of elevates this game up is the fact that every single time you play the game, you're going to pick 7 of these character cards. And you see exactly how many character cards there are in the game, and yes, these are all double-sided, meaning there's even more character cards than you think there are in the game. But these character cards are going to give every one of the players, while the game is played over 4 rounds, special powers that they're going to have for that special round. And that character power is going to carry over for the round, and players are going to auction, well, not really auction, but players are going to take these special powers, and it's going to modify how they're playing every one of the single rounds. Now, Carson City is a game that plays really great all the way up to 6 players. It's a wonderful worker placement game, and adds in a couple things that just elevate so high for me. The fact that the places that you're going for, you're not guaranteed to get them because you actually literally fight for them. The fact that you get these extra character powers, and the fact that the game has lots of built-in variants, meaning there's lots of variety, different ways to play the game, and you just can't argue the fact that the components for the game are just really great. You got these wooden guns, you got these wooden cowboys, you got all the fantastic components for this game for up to 6 players, including little mountains, which I don't have out here, and the game is random for its setup enough to make sure the game plays differently every time, adding lots of variety and extra replay to the game of Carson City. Next up is Planet Apocalypse, number 48 and new to the list, and this is a game from Peterson Games from anywhere from 1 to 5 players. Now technically it's for 2 to 5 heroes, but it can be played solo because it is a fully cooperative game, and it's a very unique take on the tower defense style game. Now what is a tower defense style game? Well, a tower defense style game, especially in this case, is players are trying to protect a point while various different enemies are slowly swarming on the heroes. If the heroes can protect that point long enough or complete some kind of objective, then they're going to win the game. This game takes that basic mechanic and kind of brings it all the way up to 11 because the hordes of hell are invading Earth, and the players are working together to stop these advancing hordes from destroying our planet. And they're going to play this game through various different maps, through different heroes, different enemies, different bad guys, and there's just so much variety to this game, which adds to the replay variety and the amount of enjoyment you're going to get out of this game. Now, the basic idea of the game is every single player is going to control a single hero, or multiple heroes if you want to play this game solo by yourself. Again, minimum 2 heroes, minimum 1 player. But your basic idea is every single player is going to control a hero. And your hero card is going to allow you to level up your hero different every single time you play the game, based on different gifts that are going to be revealed on a gift board. Now, these different gifts are going to allow you to unlock your special powers that are unique to your hero, which are going to combine with these gifts and give you extra special abilities to take out the hordes of hell. As you level up your hero, you're going to start off rolling lower mini dice, or you're going to level all the way up to more powerful dice. Eventually, hopefully, you're going to get even more powerful enough dice that are going to help you take out these more powerful demons. Because the basic low-level demons only take a 2 or higher on any die to take out, whereas more powerful demons require higher numbers on dice, meaning that some lower dice can't even hurt them at all, or some of them require you to roll multiple dice, and each one of the dice faces have to be a high enough level to take that special creature out. But what are you doing in this grand game of Planet Apocalypse? Well, you're trying to protect this point while the story is slowly advancing, because there's a doom track that is basically going on. And as this doom track advances every single round, based amount of players, the hordes of hell, including the grand leader of the hordes of hell, is going to keep advancing on the players. If the grand leader makes it to a certain point on the board, the players are going to lose. So what the players are slowly working on trying to do is level up their heroes while combating all these minor hordes of hell, while their eventual objective is to take on the grand baddie themselves and defeat the grand baddie before they make it to a certain point. If that grand baddie makes it to a certain point, all of our players lose. If our players manage to take out the grand baddies, they're going to win this game of Planet Apocalypse. Now again, there's a lot of cool things that add to the game and add to the variety and add to the replay value of the game. There are a lot of different bad guys. There are a lot of different maps. There's a lot of different medium level bad guys. There's multiple different heroes, and all these things can be picked differently every single time you play the game, making sure this game has a phenomenal amount of replay in it. Now, the very base set only comes with 2 maps, but every single expansion is adding more maps, more bad guys, and more heroes, and it's also adding more gifts. And I didn't cover this part yet, but you can also get more units of ambushes, and you can also start fighting in basically different countries. Every one of these countries is going to modify the rules just a little bit with the kind of units you can take out there on the hunting parties to take out these bad guys, save our planet from the hordes of hell that are invading. That is Planet Apocalypse, number 48 and new to the list. Dropping from number 33 all the way down to number 47 is Roll Player, the dice game. Now this takes the idea of creating your RPG character and turns it into a dice building game, because the idea of this game is players are going to start the game by picking a race, then they're going to pick a class, and they're going to pick an alignment, and they're going to pick all these different things and a backstory, and then players are going to be basically working competitively to purchase dice, and by purchasing all these dice, they're going to allow the purchase of these dice to build up the statistics for the hero. Once all of our players have built up all the statistics for the hero, with expansions, you get to start attacking these different monsters, and there's going to be a final bad guy all our players are going to work competitively to try to take out. Whoever does the best job taking out the final boss is going to get the most victory points, but it's not all about just taking out the bad guys, because how you build up your hero is going to judge how you're going to gain victory points. Because as you're playing the game, you're going to notice that all these dice have different colors in them, and obviously have different values on them. And the kind of hero that you're playing depends on what, or the kind of hero you're playing is going to judge what kind of statistics you need and where you need these statistics to be placed. For example, if you happen to have your backstories happen to be an apprentice, you see that this stat has to have a red die here, this has to be a green die, a blue die, a white die, a black die, and a purple die. And if you're unable to do that, you're going to lose out on victory points. In addition to that, if you need to watch your alignment by controlling where your alignment happens to be to influence what kind of victory points you're going to get. Not only that, when you pick your class is going to judge what kind of statistics you need to have. For example, to be a warlord, you need to have exactly 18 constitution. Fail to do so, you're going to lose out on some victory points. Whereas opposed to, you just need to have a strength of 14 plus to get 1 star. So the kind of class you have is also going to judge where you want to put these dice. And again, this is a game where players will be working competitively to try to get a hold of these dice, because every single round, one player is going to take a certain amount of dice based on the amount of players. They're going to roll them, and they're going to place them out here on these cards from highest to lowest. Then players in turn order are going to start taking these cards. Once the players are taking these cards, they're going to be able to go to a marketplace and also buy additional cards that are going to give them extra special powers for the hero, whether it happens to be armor, whether it happens to be spells, and all these different things can allow them to adjust the statistics of their hero. And again, the eventual goal is to take out these different monsters and eventually take out that bad guy for the most amount of victory points. What this game has done as the game of role player is it's created an idea of the classic RPG of creating your hero and turned it into a competitive game, and they've done it very, very well. I enjoy dice games quite a bit. Even though dice don't always like me, I still actually enjoy dice games. And this is a game that allows you to be a player who is cursed by dice to still actually enjoy having fun playing a dice game, because you get to have the fun of playing the dice. And if you happen to be an RPG player, it's also going to tickle that same little funny bone, because it feels like you're building an RPG character. Yeah, you're not going to be building a balanced RPG character. Obviously, you're trying to get certain stats to meet your hero's requirements, and you're going against a bad guy here. But the basic feel of creating an RPG character is there, and it's a wonderful game with a phenomenal amount of replay. If I would ever have one knock against this game, it's the fact that as you get more and more stuff, more and more expansions, the marketplace can get a little bit crowded, making it a little bit harder to build up your hero, because you're not going to get a guarantee that the cards you need are ever going to come out. It's not really a negative, it's just something you need to plan for, and it's also something you're going to learn as you play the game more. There's 2 expansions out for the game right now. Both these expansions add a lot more fun and variety to the game, and this is a game that I'm very happy to call number 47 of my top 51 games of all time. Number 46, dropping all the way down from number 12, is going to be the classic game from Vlaada Chvátil of Mage Knight. Now, Mage Knight is a cooperative or a competitive game that plays all the way from 1 to 4 players. And in the game of Mage Knight, the players are the as-named Mage Knights who are working across this countryside, either working competitively or working together to try to lay pretty much waste to the countryside. Let's not mince words here. We're not really the good guys here. We're here on this planet. We're going to take out the castles. We're going to take out the bad guys. And heck, we may even burn a couple of buildings on our way in an attempt to go against the conquest of taking out orcs, dragons, and various different bad guys in an effort to gain more powers by leveling up, gaining more followers and heroes, and continuing to explore the land as we travel across this land with our eventual goal based on the kind of game we're playing. Now, in the game of Mage Knight plays phenomenally well. This is a great, fantastic game. And I know a lot of you may look at this and go, well, why did it drop so much? Well, the reason why Mage Knight dropped so much is because there is another game that kind of gives me the feeling of Mage Knight, but it does a couple different changes that really intrigue me, that I really, really like, and it's a lot higher up on the list. But it doesn't mean that Mage Knight is ever going to go anywhere. I imagine Mage Knight is going to stay in my top 51 games of all time for a long, long time, because Mage Knight is a phenomenal and a fantastic game. This basically is a adventure-style game where our players are playing a deck-building game, where every single game you start the game with your own special hero who has your own special deck of cards. And this game is not super asymmetric, but it is asymmetric in the way that every single hero has one special card that's unique to their deck. Every single hero has a whole bunch of different powers that they're going to gain as they level up by gaining experience. And as you gain extra cards into your deck and extra different things as you level up and travel across the countryside, the game becomes much more asymmetric as your heroes change and evolve through the gameplay. Now, the eventual goal of the game is, depending on how you're playing the game, it's going to be a blitz conquest or a total conquest or some other thing that you're trying to do by exploring these lands, or you may even be able to fight together to take out the Grand Warlord himself, all in this game of Mage Knight, which is this wonderful deck building game, adventure game, exploration game as you travel across this countryside to become the greatest Mage Knight of all. Sometimes a game comes along that is just so unique, so different, and just so enjoyable just because what it does that's completely different from anything you ever played. And that's going to be number 45, which is going to be Tragedy Looper. Now, the game of Tragedy Looper is like a mystery whodunit style game with a little bit of time travel and a little bit of a quantum leap and a little bit of a whole bunch of different mechanics thrown together in this interesting puzzle mystery style game for anywhere from 2 to 4 players. Now, the game of Tragedy Looper, one player is going to control the mastermind who knows what is going on. They know the mystery and they know what is going to happen. And they're just trying to make sure that the horrible, horrible mystery keeps occurring. While the rest of our players, anywhere from 1 to 3 other players, are going to control the heroes in this story, who are working together to try to piece together this puzzle and try to figure out why a tragedy is happening, and do everything they can to puzzle together what that tragedy is and stop that tragedy from happening before the final loop happens and our players run out of time and lose the game. Now, it's a very interesting game because the mastermind is going to play cards down, face down, and the heroes are not going to understand why these cards are being played down and what's going on. And then our heroes are going to also take cards from the hand, and they're also going to play cards down, letting them know what their actions are going to be taken. Once everybody's played down their cards, the cards are going to slowly be revealed, and these cards are going to cause various actions to happen, such as players move different locations, heroes to explore different things, and different things are going to happen. And depending on the actions that occur and what happens in this tragedy that the heroes are trying to piece together, something may or may not happen. If nothing happens, we're going to do this for another round. Again, heroes are going to, or these different NPCs are going to move around and different interactions are going to occur. Eventually, though, a tragedy is going to happen, and maybe one of the NPCs is going to die or suffer some kind of tragic fate. And then our heroes need to piece together using this plot page right here, figure out exactly what happened, why it happened, and then work together to prevent that thing from happening. If they can prevent it from happening, then the mastermind is going to lose the game. But if the mastermind can use enough deception and enough deceit to cause these various different tragedies to keep happening without our heroes figuring out exactly what the tragedy is before the final loop happens, then the mastermind is going to win the game. Now, Tragedy Looper is an extremely interesting game, and unfortunately it's a game that's also very, very hard to get these days. It's a game that's very enjoyable, very replayable, and one of the most important and very cool things about this game is the fact that the game does allow you to create your own scripts. So even though the game comes with only 10 scripts, and each expansion adds a couple more scripts and a couple different things to the game, the ability and the fact that you can create more scripts makes a game that pretty much, in a way, is almost infinitely replayable. Because as long as you're willing to keep writing scripts and you have players who are willing to keep playing these scripts, you have a game that has a phenomenal replay, a wonderful amount of variety, and it's an interesting whodunit style game, and it's a battle of wills between the mastermind and the other players as they each try to outfox the other player, fool the other players, and convince them what is going on or what isn't going on in a game of cat and mouse while the mastermind tries to get their horrible, horrible thing to happen while the heroes try to stop it from happening. That is the game of Tragedy Looper. Coming in at number 4 and continuing the theme of worker placement games with a bite is the Manhattan Project. A 2 to 5 player worker placement game that's actually a little bit older right now, and it's kind of interesting to look at the game nowadays because a lot of these mechanics that we see in modern games, not realizing that the Manhattan Project actually pioneered a lot of these mechanics, and on top of that, no game even today has quite managed to do exactly what the Manhattan Project has done, incorporating all these different mechanics into one single solitary game in such an amazing package the way the Manhattan Project did it. Now, the Manhattan Project, every single player is going to play one of the various nations, and you're all racing to be the first to build the big bomb. Now, depending on how many players you're playing the game, it's also going to mean that you may have to build more than a couple bombs. But the basic idea of the game is you're working against each other to be the first nation to build a certain amount of victory points with the big bombs. The first nation that does so is to be the grand winner of the game. Now, the interesting thing that this game pioneered was the fact that you have workers who actually work in different hierarchies, and certain workers can only work at certain levels and other workers cannot work at other levels. And what I'm meaning here is that in this game you have your laborers, you have your engineers, and you have your scientists. Now, a scientist can always do a laborer's job, but a laborer can't do a scientist's job. So it's a worker placement game where you send your workers out onto this worker placement board right here, and you're going to use these various different locations to get benefits, but again, only certain workers go to certain locations. Adding into this is the fact that in this game you have your own personal board that you can work on, where once you purchase these cards you can add them onto your board, and then your workers can also go to those locations and also continue to give you resources. So not too unique or anything like that yet. But now let's add in one little extra level of the game, and adding the fact that you can actually bomb your other players' factories and resources, and you have to protect your resources with factories to prevent other players from bombing your factories. And add in even one more extra level on this, the fact that you can send your workers to other players' nations by sending out spies to actually steal their resources. And when your worker goes to their factories, they can't access their factories until your worker returns. And this is one of those games where you put out all your workers until you decide to do a recall phase where you can pull back all your workers. And if you spend time putting all your workers on other players' boards, you can gain access to their resources, and they can't use them until you do your big pullback. So this game incorporates a whole bunch of unique mechanics all together with a very interesting theme to create a fantastic worker placement game with a bite. That's the Manhattan Project number 44. Coming in at number 43 is the Railways series of games, and I have the map out for Railways in Nippon. But understand the Railways of the World is a complete series of games. There's multiple maps. There's the Western Coast, there's the Eastern United States, there's New Mexico, there is just so many different maps available for this game. There's Great Britain, there's the Railways Through Time. I think there's got to be at least 10 or 11 maps available for this game by now, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I know it's pretty close to that amount of maps. But the basic idea of the railway systems of the games is every single player is going to be a rail baron. And this game does play all the way up to 6 players. And again, some maps are better at certain player counts. But the cool thing about this game is just the amount of brutalness, the amount of strategy, and the amount of depth mixed into a game that is actually really, really simple to teach. The basic idea of the game is every single player is just working together to build routes between different cities. If you complete a route between a different city, you're going to lay claim to that route, and then you, on your turn, well, let's do this with the white train, so it looks like I'm actually playing a 2-player game here. If you manage to complete a route, then you start transporting the goods to other cities that need the goods. If you transport a good to another city, congratulations, you're going to get some victory points, which is going to increase your income in the game. Whoever has the most amount of victory points in the game is be the grand winner of the game. But the trick and the absolute brutality of the game is the fact that you are railway baron with 0 cash at the start of the game. So before you do anything in this game, you need to start taking out loans, you need to start taking out bonds, you need to start taking out these bonds to be able to get the money to do anything in return. Here's the trick. These bonds can never, ever be paid off, and they're actually worth negative victory points in the game. So right from the start of the game, your very first decision you're going to make in this game is a very tough choice. And every future decision in this game is also going to be a tough choice, because you need to factor in every single decision you're going to make is going to prove to be profitable in the end. Because if the decisions you're making are not being profitable, you guessed it, you're going to have to start taking more and more of these bonds, and eventually you can get so many of these bonds that it becomes nearly impossible to win the game. And that's one of the things that I really, really enjoy about Railways of the World. It is a really simple idea of a game to teach, but it's got so much strategic depth, and it's got a lot of replay variety, because every single time you play this game, you have the amount of variety in the game from the different maps, but every one of these maps is going to be seeded differently every time you play the game. Because at the start of the game, you're basically going to seed every one of these cities with a certain amount of cubes. And those are the cubes that that city basically produces. Now, if you want to get money for those cubes, you need to transport those cubes to a city that requires cubes of that color. So if I want to make money for this cube right here, I need to send it to a red city. Well, we can see that's not too hard to get over to this red city, but what if it's something more challenging? What if I had to get a purple cube from this city all the way over to this city? Now I got to start transporting through other cities, but my railway at the beginning of the game, I can only make a railway that's one section of cities long. So if I want to be transporting through multiple cities, I need to start upgrading my railways to a level 2, level 3, level 5, all the way up to a level 8 railway. And you can see that even upgrading your railways costs a lot of money. So this is a game that I enjoy immensely, because it is a game that will never ever hold your hand. This is a game that is not afraid to kick you in the teeth and say, play better next time. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about this game, because it has so much strategic depth, so much variety, and it's just one of those cutthroat games where every single decision you're going to look at the board and go, if I do this, it's going to cost me about $5,000, but I'm going to increase my income by probably about $7,000, so that's going to come out in the end. But while that may work out right now, there's this other thing over here, and if I don't take this right now, my opponent who's next in line is going to take this, and that's going to allow them to increase their income by about $9,000. But if I take it right now, I'm going to suffer a deficit. So would I play the long game and go for something that's going to help me now, or do I prevent my opponent across the table from having even more challenging or more advantages to that? And that's just one of the interesting things about the game. Not only that, but the other really cool thing is even turn order in this game is an auction mechanic, which means, you guessed it, you got to spend money to make sure that you go first in the game. And going first can be really important in a round, because again, the first person to build a route between the cities is the first person to claim it, and they're the ones who start transporting those cubes, increase their income, and earn money in Railways of the World. Number 42, and new to the list, is This War of Mine. A story-based cooperative game that is 100% done absolutely right, because this is a story-based game that you can keep playing over and over and over again. It's not one of those games that you're going to get bored of, because it's the exact same thing that you played last time you played the game, because the story isn't changing. This is one of those games that's extremely scenario-based, with a storybook and with character evolution to ensure that this game is going to play differently every single time. And let's not even forget the fact that this is a really, really tragic theme. This is a theme of people living in a bombed out city, just trying to survive for one more night as they try to live out the events of a war that's going on around them. Because if you live out just one more night, there's a chance you can survive the war, get your life back together and move on after the war is over and try to survive in a post-war torn society. Now, this game is a really phenomenal game. There's just so many things I'd like to say about the game, but I can't do it without giving away spoilers because this is a story-based game. Now, the way you're going to play this game is you're going to pick one of a couple different scenarios. Of course, if you got the expansions, there's 2 expansions available for the game that I know of. They're going to start adding some extra scenarios and everything along the lines like that. But the basic idea is the players are going to control a couple different survivors. And with these survivors, you need to worry about things such as misery, you got to worry about illness, you got to worry about wounds, and you got to worry about exploring this little building that they're trying to survive in. During the day, they're going to explore this building. At night, they're going to go out on raids just to find enough supplies to survive for one more day. And as you're going out and doing various different things, you're going to go through the book of scripts, which is going to tell you various different things that are going to happen based on your decisions and different story-based things and storylines that's going to go on. It's kind of, in a way, kind of includes classic mechanics from Tales of the Arabian Nights, plus a story-based cooperative game in a really, really challenging game, because I'm not going to lie, this is a game that is extremely challenging, very tough, but it's very, very rewarding, because it's one of those games that you want to go back to over and over again just to see how the story is going to play out at a different time, depending on different scenario you're going to play, how the different chapters are going to evolve, and how everything's going to change. And one other thing I haven't even mentioned about this game is this is one of the very unique games in the fact that you don't need to go home and study a 40-page rulebook before you get the game to the table. To learn this game, you're simply going to pull out the journal, flip to page number 1, set up the game like it tells you to do so, flip to page number 2, do exactly what it says, then you're going to take the book, hand it to the next player in order, they're going to flip over the next page, and they're going to do whatever it says on the next page. You're going to keep passing the book around until it comes back to you, and guess what? You're now ready for day 2. And you're going to keep doing this over and over and over again. This is a brilliant way to learn a game. It's awesome to be able to go to the store, buy a game, bring it home, sit down, just read one page and say, guys, you guys ready? Cool, let's go and start. Who wants to be player 1? You're player 1. Here's the book. Start reading. Let's start making some decisions, because all our decisions are going to matter. Add into the fact on this that this is a game that does have a lot of replay value, because you're going to see the board differently every time you play the game. The chapters are going to play out differently every single time you play the game. The different objectives are going to come out differently, and every time you go out and explore the city at night, different events are going to happen based on how silent you are, how far you need to go away from your little trying to survive building that you're trying to survive in. All these little different things are going to go together to create this phenomenal story of pure survival in a war-torn society. That's This War of Mine. Number 41 and new to the list is going to be the game of Azul. Now, Azul is an abstract strategy game, and this game is really fantastic. And I'm not just saying it because this is my wife's favorite game. It's one of the few games my wife will actually play who is not a board gamer. So the idea behind Azul is this is basically just a pattern set kind of game where the players are trying to build patterns on their board to score a certain amount of victory points. Whoever scores the most amount of victory points will be the grand winner of the game. But the cool and the fantastic thing about this game is how you're going to gain those victory points, how you're going to claim these tiles, and how you can kind of, if you're really good at the game, you can be very deceptive and actually force your opponents to lose victory points. But let me go and explain how the game basically works. On your turn, you're basically going to pick one of these piles, and you're going to pick one color of tiles from that pile. Whatever color you take, you're going to add it to your board, and the rest of the tiles are going to go to the center of the board. So let's just say, for example, I decide I want to take this color of this player. All the rest of the tiles are going to go to the center of the board, and now I must place this tile somewhere on my board on one of these rows. Here's the trick. No tile can go on a row where that color has already been filled in, and no tile can go in a spot that can be filled by another tile. So for example, if I already have a blue right here, that means no other color of tiles can go in this row. So if I'm forced to take other colors of tiles and all these other rows are filled, they're going to go down here in this bottom row, and every tile in this bottom row is be worth negative victory points in the game. So just continue our example. Myself as my player, I picked this tile and I put it here because, man, dumb reason, but I'm just showing you how to play the game. Now it's this player's turn. This player decides that they want to take all these tiles right here, and these tiles are going to put over here, and they're going to fill in this row here for the number 2. And we're going to keep doing this back and forth until all the tiles are claimed, and the first person to claim the center pile, any of the tiles from the center pile, they're going to be the first player next turn, but they're also going to lose a victory point. Once we've claimed all these tiles are simply going to slide over to fill up the row, and the extra pieces will be moved to the board and go out of the board, and it's not going to be put back on the board until the next round starts. We're basically going to keep doing this over and over and over again until one player manages to fill out one complete solid row all the way across. Once that's done, we're going to score victory points based on how many of these tiles we manage to fill out, certain patterns we manage to make, and also connecting these tiles as we play the game. Because as you play these tiles out there, if you manage to connect multiple tiles of a certain color in a row, they're going to be worth multiples of victory points. So you want to be building these tiles out in the smart patterns so they start multiplying upon themselves and giving you a lot of victory points, while avoiding being forced to take tiles that you can't use, because as you get more and more of these tiles, they're going to be worth negative victory points. So it's kind of a back and forth style game that usually plays about 5 or 6 rounds, depending on the amount of players you have, and it's a really richly rewarding game. It's very simple to teach, but it's very deeply strategic, and there's a lot of deep strategy in this game. The very first couple times you play this game, you're basically working on your own strategy alone because you're not quite aware of everything that's going on. But as you evolve your gameplay with this game, the gameplay becomes much more devious, because you're going to start looking at the board and going, now these tiles could be worth a couple of victory points for me right now, but I see that my opponent can't take these tiles at all. So this tile will only give me 1 victory point, but if I force my opponent to take all these, they're going to lose 14 victory points. So yeah, I'm going to be a jerk. I'm going to take that tile right here. It's only worth 1 victory point to me, but now you're going to lose 14 victory points. Kind of devious, part of the strategy of the game. Now the game does have a lot of replay variety thanks to the fact that you have multiple different boards. They're all double-sided, and these gray spots can take any colored tile. The colored sections can only take colors of that specific tile, and you're basically going to play this game until you have a grand winner of the game. It's very interesting, very unique, multiple ways to score, multiple ways to play, and it's a fantastic game that actually plays phenomenally well all the way from 2 to 4 players. I've enjoyed my play of this game from 2 players all the way up to 4. As a matter of fact, my wife loved playing this game just as a couples game. It's phenomenal for that. That's the game of Azul. Rounding out the list and coming in at number 40 is going to be the game of Lockup from Thunderworks Games. Now this is a 1 to 5 player auctioning style game that's cleverly disguised to almost look like a worker placement game, but this is definitely an auctioning style game. And this is a game that has a lot of really cool theme mixed in with a lot of cool mechanics to create this wonderful kind of game. And let's just be honest, Thunderworks Games is really knocking it out of the park. There is not a single game they have that they produce that I haven't liked. Matter of fact, this is the second game from them you've actually seen on the top 51 games of all time list, because they just really enjoy their games. But the basic idea of Lockup is this is going to be an auction style game, and players will be auctioning for these different locations with their prison ghouls. Now the trick about the game here is that your ghouls have various strengths, various different weaknesses, and various different values, and you're going to send them out to these different locations on your turn. And on your turn you can place out as many of your goons as you want in a specific location. But here's the cool little extra mechanic to the game. Every single round you're allowed to place up to 2 of your goons face down so nobody knows the value of that goon. And all these different goons have different things, such as the Lookout, which has 0 strength, but he allows you to watch out and avoid raids and stuff like that. Or you have really strong goons that are worth a flat strength of 5. Or you have some of your goons who their strength is based on how many times you send them out to the exercise yard. And when I send these goons out to these various different locations, I can place them face up, or I can place them face down, which means you have no idea what strength I placed there. Did I place my 2 super strong guys here right now because I am expecting to really get this location because I want the best benefits from that location? Or am I bluffing you? Or am I concerned that there's a whole bunch of notoriety cubes here makes me worried about a raid, meaning that I sent my Lookout here, meaning that I don't want to pick these notoriety cubes up because whoever has the most strength at this location is also going to get these notoriety cubes. And once all the notoriety cubes have been placed on the board, at the end of that round, a raid is going to occur. And when a raid occurs, whoever has the most of these notoriety cubes means they've attracted all the attention of the guards, and they are going to lose some victory points. And that's another cool thing about this game, is how you're getting victory points. This game has different victory point conditions every time you play the game. Every time you play the game, you pick 1 instant victory point condition, 1 leader victory point condition, and then 1 endgame victory point condition. And the players are working against each other to try to get these victory point conditions, and you kind of have to lock them in and make sure they're not stolen from you, because that's something else that's also about this game. Like I said, this is an auction game. You're auctioning for locations, and in a way you're also auctioning for these victory points in a game that's very much thematically matching Thunderworks game theme from all their different designs. Now this game is really, really phenomenal. It does play from 1 to 5 players, and one of the things I really do enjoy about it is the fact that this game is asymmetric. Now you can play the basic game right here, or you can play with the various different player powers, which means that all these different factions play differently. And I'm not going to lie to you here. I like the theme. I think the theme is very cool. It's a fantasy theme where this is basically a fantasy jail where you have your gnolls, your goblins, your hobgoblins, your insectoids, which are kind of unique, but hey, what the heck. There's got to be an insectoid race out there somewhere. And you're basically trying to work through this prison without getting the attention of the guards, while trying to get these goons on your side, while hiring these guys right here for extra victory points in a set collection game in a auctioning style game in a secret kind of bidding game where you're getting these extra cards, these extra abilities with these awesome different victory end game conditions, making sure this game is never going to play the same game twice. And I didn't mention this before yet, but this board is actually double-sided, which is something I wish board game producers would do much more often. If you have a game that plays great at multiple different player counts, it helps you to also have a board that also factors in those multiple different player counts. Especially when it comes to these style of games where when you have less players, you need tighter resources. So get a double-sided board so the other side of the board is more compact. So there's less locations going, meaning that game is going to play great at all those player counts. But that's Lockout from Thunderworks Games.